Hey there, listener. Have you been feeling powerless in one area of your life, whether it's at work, at home, in your personal relationships? I can't wait for you to hear today's podcast. I have Isabel Chiara, the creator of the life actualization process. She has been a guide and mentor for over 30 years, and we are going to explore how you can activate your own power, access your inner tools for wisdom, and create a life that is nourishment from the inside out. Stay tuned. Every day there is a forgetting, and every moment there is the possibility of remembering. Remembering who you truly are, awakening to your body, to the inner world, to the experience of being alive. Here is where you find the beauty, the joy, and here is where you free your soma. I'm your host, Aimee Takaya. I'm here to help you move from pain to power, from tension to expansion, and ultimately from fear to love. Hello, Isabel. So nice to meet you.
Hi, Amy. I'm so excited to talk to you. We just spent a lot of time getting to know each other, and I'm thrilled with what we're going to come up with now.
Yes, absolutely. So this word nourishment, I mentioned that, in like kind of the teaser here today. And this is a word for you. Your upcoming, is it a book, right? It's called Nourish.
Upcoming book, but also I have an app, and it's called the Nourishment App,
Wonderful.
which is amazing, and we could talk about that after.
Yeah, well, let's explore this word and like what it means beyond, because I think a lot of people are familiar with this idea of nourishing through just, eating healthy food, or that means like, nourishment. But you're talking about a nourishment that goes beyond just like what we're eating, right? Can you explain to us what nourishment means in this bigger picture framework?
So I talk about nourishment as a way to be in life.
Mhm.
It's a way to look at yourself from the inside out, as a way to feel, like we have a lot of food cravings and we have a lot of things that we're always looking outside of ourselves. And so when we start to look at ourselves inside, we start to feel more present, we start to feel more whole, we start to, and I'm not saying just feel, it's actually almost like a state of being.
Mhm.
So I look at the word nourishment as a path, and you never can be wrong on your path. You're always on the path, right? And you're always feeling more nourished, but you don't come from a place of not being nourished. You're always nourished. And so I call it like way better than having goals, because when you have a goal, you're trying to get to a certain point. So you're almost never there. But with Nourish, you're always there. You're
Mhm.
always being, you're always you. It's from the inside out.
Yeah.
And something like being joyful, like the ultimate goal of being nourished is that you do, the benefit of that is to feel joyful and to feel happy, because on some level you're satiated.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, I feel like that's what we're all searching for. So I use nourishment as kind of a mantra.
Mm.
It's a word that I bring in for myself because I was my first practice person, right? It's a word that has all of those feelings, all of everything that's going on, any triggers, anything that's going on in life, bring it back into like an okay state, an inner knowing that we're processing something and it's okay. So it's like nourishment is almost like a sensation.
Mm.
We're okay.
Yeah, I love this. I love this. So let me just play back some things that I picked up on here, and you can like let me know if I got kind of what you're saying, which is that, to nourish ourselves is like something we have to do, but you're saying it's actually just a way of being. Like as we're sitting here breathing in air, right, and taking in oxygen, our cells are being nourished by that oxygen. Our bodies right now are turning over and creating and building, our reality real time, and that we don't actually have to do anything. It's actually about like stepping out of the way and allowing that natural process to occur rather than an extra thing we have to somehow do or achieve, or like you say, meet a goal. It's more about getting in touch with what is actually occurring all the time, which is that our bodies are a creative living process.
Right. And I say nourishment is mantra. I don't know if I said that before, but I say it's a mantra that, when we have those conversations that come up in our head that say, oh, you did that bad, or look what somebody did to me, or any of those conversations, you get to go back to the word nourishment and you get to reframe
Mm.
how you're looking at whatever happened from the inside. Like, what did that bring up inside of you? Because what you get to do, and this is where my app comes in, is you get to go back and look at where something started,
Mm.
behavior started, or these feelings really started. And what you didn't get, we get to look at what we didn't get as a child or, recently, and and what do we really want? What are we really craving? Why is it we can't metabolize the situation that just occurred for us just now, and how we can go back and do it? Because, let's face it, we are all getting triggered left and right, a lot. And we get to use that as a way to accept ourselves more. I like that.
Right.
Be present with ourselves more instead of pushing away the feelings that occurred. Let's just say we felt anxious from something somebody said, which occurs a lot. It's a big trigger, right? Somebody said something and we put some meaning into it and we said, oh, dude, they don't like us, whatever we said, or they think we're not intelligent, any of the above. We have a whole litany of what's happening above. And so it's not really true. It's very
Right.
subjective, right? So we get to look at it differently. We get to hold it differently. We get to use it as a way to, I like to say, jump from this one way of being to another way of looking at things, and or looking at it as something that happens for us.
Yeah, right. To our benefit, to our nourishment, to help us, deepen our growth and our connection to ourselves. Did you know that your muscles are holding on to thoughts, memories, and feelings? If you have a tight neck or back, you're not just getting old, you're experiencing a buildup of tension from the life you've lived. Most people don't know this, but there is a part of your brain that can reverse and prevent chronic tension. When you relax your muscles, you not only move better and regulate your nervous system, but you also free yourself from the grip the past has over your body. So you can live with freedom, confidence, and enjoy your life now. How does that sound? Join me, Aimee Takaya, and discover what my clients are raving about at youcanfreeyoursoma.com.
Right. So I think that if we begin to walk along that pathway, because that's what nourishment is, it's a path. And, there's different little roads we take, but we feel better because we know that whatever's happening is for our greater good, or for what's going on in our life, or for building upon ourselves, strengthening ourselves, bringing ourselves more confident, joy, happiness. We're still always on that path for ourselves.
Beautiful. What's coming up is like receptivity, or being able to like receive the moment or receive the nourishment, right? Because a lot of times we live in a world that's so fast paced, and we're not slowing down enough to, as you say, metabolize our experiences,
Right.
and even our digestive system can't like work very well when we are in fight or flight, when we're in that like fast paced, gotta go, right? And so part of what you're describing sounds very much like a mindfulness, but beyond that, it's like, how can I be present with what's coming up so I can receive the nourishment,
Yes.
right?
Well, I just wanted to piggyback off of what you just said. I'm just going to give you an example. So this morning, right before I got on the call with you, I just did a body scan, which is one of the techniques I do. And I went in to check, what part of my body, or what's going on in it, and because, this whole nourishment thing is from the inside out. And so many times we just, wake up, we don't have meditative practices, and we just like, from the hip and go out in our life. But if we create different safe spaces for ourselves, I like to say, where we go inside of ourselves and start to see what's going on in our body, because we don't pay attention to like our heart, our solar plexus, like what do they want? Like, what are they craving? Because they're really kind of leading the path, leading a lot of behaviors, these behaviors in ours because they want attention. So
Mhm.
I did this body scan today and I focused in on my heart because I noticed that a lot of your podcasts really are very heartfelt. So I wanted to see what my heart was saying this morning. And it felt a little hard around the edges. So I could feel that. And also, I noticed, I asked why, what was going on. And your body parts answer you.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
tap into yourself. Your body starts to answer you. So it said, I'm not allowing myself to receive, right? I was in the doing all week long. I was in a lot of the doing of my life, and it wanted to receive. And it wasn't asking for much, it was asking for acknowledgement, love. And so I gave it to myself in that moment. And that's all it really takes. It only takes a few moments to recognize different parts of your body and see what it's craving. What does it want? What does it need? And by giving that to that part of the body, you can almost feel the blood flowing and
Mm.
pumping into that, and the energy's opening up in that part of my body. So I was like, wow, this was like a great message this morning. And I knew we were going to have a good interview because that happened.
Yeah, well, I love that. Right into the receptivity and like, what is it that I'm needing? And I love that body scanning is a huge part of my modality too. It's like you kind of like the first step, is just getting in touch with what's going on, what is, right? We're not trying to fix anything. We're not trying to change anything. We are going to notice things that are feeling rough, like you described around the edges or tight, or maybe, there's pain, but it's a really great preventative practice to do what you're describing because a lot of times we aren't paying attention, as you said, to our heart or to our lungs or to different areas of our body unless there's something wrong or unless those areas start screaming at us. And why would they have to scream? Is because we haven't been listening to their gentle whispers, right?
Right. We're not paying attention. Well, I wasn't trained. This is what leads people into the work they do, right? I was trained at a very early age to not pay attention to my feelings.
Hey,
Is
yeah.
that the story for everybody? I think it's a big story for a lot of people. And I was also trained to just kind of move through things. And I didn't value feelings and
Mm.
sensations. I didn't even connect. As a matter of fact, most of my life was spent trying to not have any feelings, I even used spirituality.
Mm.
And I learned a lot of healing modalities over the years. I've been doing this since the 70s. And to the point where, people were like, oh, she's crazy, that girl, including my family. So I did it because I knew that was a way for me to connect, but I wasn't using it. I wasn't using spirituality in a way to connect. I was using it as a way to disconnect.
Right. Override feelings and
Override
sensations.
my feelings. I would say,
Hmm.
okay, let me go to a higher source and feel really good over here. But then ignoring this. So I had two separate
Yeah.
things going on here. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna go home and like be my spirit, pray and be spiritual and be out of my body. Here we go. Uh,
Yeah, I love that you're bringing this up because this is actually, I think, sometimes a little bit of a touchy or kind of controversial subject for, energy workers and for very, highly spiritual people who spend a lot of time, in their upper chakras or in their energy body, because they have these really profound ecstatic kinds of experiences, but they also are maybe not grounded and they're also not knowing how to be in their human body, right? To be in their humanness, and that you kind of were able to come back into your body and back into like your humanness after also experiencing these really big energetic states. Maybe you can say a little bit about that process.
I mean, it was so many years. I really thought it was because I didn't know how to deal with emotions.
Mm,
I thought they were bad. So I
right.
labeled them.
Low vibe.
Yeah, I labeled emotions. So the only one I allowed myself to have is anger. Okay, because that was like, represented, full
Power, strength.
in around me.
Yeah.
So whatever you allow in, like is projected. And I was like, okay, good, gotta release, but I started meeting, when you're in the energy field, you meet people that are anger is not an okay thing, but
Right.
people don't want to experience your anger. So I really had to redevelop myself, especially like if you're working with people on how to really communicate and really speak and really allow people to have their feelings. That was another thing. I was telling people, don't worry, it's okay. Let's do this so you don't have them. So what I was experiencing, I was trying to get different clients that I was coaching to how to surpass their feelings too, because I thought that was a really good way to be. And I've just recently come to the point in the last few years that a more somatic way
Mm.
of being is really, a full spectrum way to be with your feelings. And I think that's, I have gotten my greatest growth
Mm,
really
mhm.
experiencing a whole line of different emotions in my body and
Yeah.
allowing it to come through my body and allow myself to look at it.
Mm.
It's very hard for people to do that. There's not a lot of people that will look at their feelings, but I also think that once you start to look at them, they become messages for
Mm.
you to really just experience a growth. That's why I say when we're on the nourishment path, just looking at those experiences and acknowledging them and knowing what they have come from somewhere in your past.
Yeah.
And they've come from somewhere, and you are able to resolve the past. The chances of them having been resolved in the past, I have noticed that they are not totally resolved.
Yeah. And, I think that, we kind of heal in a spiral shape, right? Like it's not something that like has an end point. As long as we're alive, we're always growing and learning and uncovering, new mysteries within ourselves. And so we're looping back around to like these same things, but it's part of the process. And so as, I first of all, I can completely relate to like everything that you shared about being in kind of denial of your emotions and thinking that you could kind of like outsmart your body is kind of how I felt about it. I mean, because I was facing physical
Yeah, I
pain,
like that. Outsmart
right?
my body.
I could
How
just outsmart myself. Like I'm so smart and I'm so connected. I can just like kind of fantasize a little bit my way out of this by creating a scenario that's going to make me feel better, but it's not actually like being with the pain inside.
Oh yeah. I'm with you on that one. I used visualization. I
Mm.
actually studied with Shakti Gawan, who is the creative visualization person who started the whole thing in the 80s. I studied with her and I would use visualization to come out of my body and shift situations. So
Mm-hmm.
as it really does work, I think we still have to name and notice what the feelings are.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I'd say like what you just described, with visualization. And I've had these experiences too, where you get into these really high vibrational states and you feel like a wizard or something because you can make big changes in your life. It's a legitimate way to transform, what's happening for you is through these techniques, but you're kind of missing like the shadow layer. You're missing like some piece of it that, is going to keep you grounded, is going to help you hold space for other people in their challenges and not just invite them to kind of overlook those things,
Mhm.
right? As they fester, right? And because they do. If we don't deal with those feelings, right,
Right.
they can fester. And that's how I think sometimes, illness and things like that can come about to, to spiritual people or people who are on like a healing path who are flabbergasted to suddenly be diagnosed with cancer or to have some kind of thing happen in their body because they're like, oh, I take such good care of myself. But maybe there's been a way they've been bypassing these important messengers, these
that are
important
sitting that
sensations.
are sitting in their tissues,
Yes.
and their tissues are like now forming some kind of a,
Build up.
yeah.
Yes. And so I completely relate. It's still part of my ongoing process because as you mentioned, this is not easy. This is not like an easy just thing to do. Like, yeah, you get a little bit better at it each time that you're sitting with an uncomfortable feeling and sensation and memory, if it's grief or it's sorrow or it's anger. I kind of think of it as like a flavor palette, you know what I mean, of different kinds of human experience. And
Right.
there's some that we've labeled like, this is a yucky taste. We don't like this. It's like, well, what if we refined our palate and opened up to the bitter tastes or the sour tastes or like the kind of earthy, heavier tastes, like we could learn to appreciate and be nourished by it all.
Right. Which can I bring in my app right now? Are you
Yeah,
okay?
please do. Yeah.
So I like to call it like it's the Nourish app, and it's unlocking the power of these activations. And I've written 12 activations, which are really meditation, exploration, and transformation type of meditations. And I have four unique bundles in it, and they are all focus themes. And what I recommend people do is they just listen to the process a couple of times a week. And what happens is the body starts to go through the process. I also, in the process, have an activation, which is the meditative process, a reading component. So they get a sheet of paper that's talking about whatever the theme is.
Mm,
I'll go through the themes in a minute. And I have an essential elixir, which I call, which are the affirmations that will
mm.
reinforce this behavior. And what happens is people can shift, they can get some kind of comfort, some kind
Yeah.
of result uh,
Yes.
quickly because of the way this whole thing is lined up. And so some of my activations are called like one that I is really powerful. It's called I'm not enough, right?
Mm,
How many of us have that type of belief or foundation inside of us still, no matter what, a lot of times, where did it come from, right?
mm,
And we've adopted this way of believing about ourselves. And I think through this nourishment process and listening to the app, we call in the child that had this experience and made this decision that I'm not enough, right? Made this belief, which has become the foundation, a lot of foundational experiences in their life. And then we bring in the guardian,
mm,
their own guardian. It could be their mom. It could be not anybody. It could be just a guardian that has a communication with this
mm.
part of ourselves. And we get to check in with ourselves to see what we really crave, what we really want, what we didn't get.
Yeah.
Because chances are we still aren't getting it. And through a series of some of these activations, we realize like our body has needs. Our psyche has needs. We have needs, our different parts of us. And we get to give that to ourselves by I bring in the guardian, but I also bring in this whole way to heal and resolve that situation and
Mm,
transform that situation so that we don't have to go through our life and say, okay, I'm not going to do this here, or this is not going to. We get to just satisfy ourselves, and it's going to be a natural process
mm,
because really looking at this as it's an internal process, and we shift from the inside out and we start to look at things differently and we start to behave differently. We start to feel like we are enough. And what ends up happening with a lot of people, I've been told, including with myself, that we start to have the words, the little words that come to
mm.
us that, oh, we are enough.
Yeah.
We feel enough. And we get to get it in our tissues now, start to absorb that. And we start to feel that. And it becomes part of our dialogue with ourself.
Mm,
Cool. And I have here's a really good one because if we want to talk about food, I have one called Setting the Table.
mm,
And through this app, I've done it with many people, including myself. There's a visual and there's a thing or a picture that we have or feelings we have inside of ourselves of how we did our family table,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
That created, some of us are just wounded from that experience or have feelings about that experience. And we get to go back in and look at different parts of like that experience of how we eat,
Mm,
setting of the table, how we do food with our family. And I mean, many of us, because we don't feel good about it, can't even sit down and eat with a group of people
mm.
because
It
didn't feel
didn't
good.
nourish us.
It nourish us. And we
Yeah.
don't eat. And we learn not to eat by being nourished also. We learn to
Mm,
just eat, right? And like, oh my God, I hope someone doesn't say something. I hope nobody says something here. I hope that, no one's yelling at the table. I hope that, so it was not always a great experience for people, but through my app and setting the table, which is a symbol for the mindset that we've
mm.
childhood, that we can bring in again ourself and our inner guardian and resolve all of that kind of happened at the dinner table.
Yeah. It's so crazy when as you're talking about this, like it's not an area that I like, specifically like have focused on in like my past, but I have multiple different events that happened around sitting down to eat, or even the lack thereof. In my household, like there was a lot of chaos and there were often like meals weren't shared. You know what I mean? And it was sort of like fend for yourself. And that was also like an experience of like abandonment or neglect that I experienced, that nobody was taking care of me at the dinner table. There wasn't a dinner table set for me, and so as you're saying this, I'm like, oh wow, there's a lot there. There's a lot there that people probably aren't even aware of that influence the way that they interact with their food, the way that they diet or don't diet or whatever it is, right? Because I can
Right.
see that in myself as you're speaking about it.
Yeah, it's cute. Like, or we're hurried at the dinner table. Like, hurry up and eat. And like you're like shoveling, food down your throat. And we don't even know. We're just eating because we're just in the middle of this thing that we do, but we don't even acknowledge the whole eating food experience.
Right.
Yeah. So this is like so healing, this particular setting the table. And when people start to do it a couple of times, they start to change the relationship between them, the food, and the players around it.
Mm,
The whole experience starts to shift. And probably they would notice it more because they're going to start to experience in their outer life.
mm,
Right? They're going to start to be like, okay, you know what? Maybe we'll sit down. Maybe we'll have some conversation. Things will start to shift for them just by looking at this experience differently. And I do have, so many other activations
activations.
that are relationship based.
Mm,
Really going, really looking at relationships because let's face it, who can spend all that money on therapy lately? And do we get resolution from therapy a lot? So my app offers a way to begin to shift how we look at the experiences because we're in our psyche and because our eyes are closed and because we're really seeing this, it just ends up like moving itself, untangling itself. I like to say.
yeah, absolutely. I think of, therapy for me was a starting point. And I think for many people, it's like a starting point. It's like, oh, I haven't said these things out loud to people before. I haven't let anybody into my inner world. Like, let me go to a place where it's going to feel like controlled and safe. And like, the person is like, required by law to not share my personal information, like all those things that make a person feel like they can unload. So it's like a starting point for a lot of people. But then, as I experience with my own clients, as I'm sure you experience, you reach a wall, you reach a point where the talk therapy is not enough and there's more that needs to happen, right? And these activations sound like a more interactive, more self-sustaining kind of practice where you're taking that's responsibility, which is also ultimately, I believe, what we need to do to heal. It's like be self-responsible in that way, right?
I also think like sometimes talk therapy, we've all done it, depending on how it's presented. All it does for me, it felt like it embedded
Mm,
a problem inside of me and made me more overwhelmed with the
mm,
process.
yeah,
I feel like
spinning your wheels a bit.
yeah, like it just made me dig my feet into whatever the situation was. Like, oh, like, okay, so this happened and now what? I can't do anything about it. Not true. I mean, it did happen, but what are the other things that happened around it and how else can we look at it? But as long as I think we have some kind of a resolution or a way to break ourselves free from it, look at it differently,
Mm,
and that's what this app provides. That's why it's different than most other apps. It's very, very specific. And I go into how many of us eat because we don't know what's showing up, and our
yeah.
body's so intuitive lately, right? And we know something's going on. We just can't see it. We can't feel it yet. So I call this particular activation eating into the abyss of the unknown because
Mm,
start to eat and people start to get anxious and nervous because something's happening. They don't know exactly what it is, but something's about to go down. How many people are there right now? Because people's intuition are really on right now.
yeah, and we do try to cover that up with food. I completely relate to that because it's a very immediate, quick way to get some of that comfort, some of
Yeah.
that feeling of safety. It also distracts us because it's sensational and our body starts now processing the food instead of investigating like what that sensation or feeling might be, right? It's a way to kind of like cover it up for the time being. And I have to say, like, it's really a reliable way, like a trustworthy way. We know that if we like stop and get a Starbucks, like, muffin or whatever, like we can stop the thing we're picking up on that's feeling uncomfortable,
Right.
but it doesn't resolve it. It
Maybe
doesn't
it'll go
change
away.
that, it doesn't go away. Yeah.
But we're like, okay, let's just do this, something else, distract ourselves, and then maybe it'll go away. So, I like to think of this whole my whole app as a way to reclaiming your relationship with food and transforming one's life, because the way we do food is the way we do our life. If we're
Yeah.
not just eating, at that one moment. Like we're doing, food, we're escaping, we're not dealing with our feelings, we're doing our life in every arena, relationships with ourself also. We don't want to deal with it. We're doing life like that if that's how we're doing food. So that's a great indicator of how we are doing our life. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love this. I mean, food has been a big part of my journey. I had food sensitivities for like over 10 years. I had a lot of like gut health challenges. And, it was not just through like getting information and trying out different things and that helped me feel more resolved in that area. Like now I don't have the same food sensitivities, right? And some of that was practical things that I tried and experimented with that were helpful. But the other side of that was working with my nervous system to actually resolve some of these deeper traumas that I experienced, right? That were part of my inability to receive nourishment, we could say, my inability to like let myself be in that absorption state and instead like not want to process life, be like, oh, actually there's too much stuff that's already been built up in here, I don't have any space to process anything more, and that's why my gut was just like not processing things. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? And then we call that poor digestion, we call that bloating, we call that all these things. And
Those
yes,
are
there was a physical element, but there was absolutely an emotional and energetic element there.
I think there's an emotional component to most everything that's going on in our lives now that I accepted that part. I think that there is an emotional component to a lot of things.
Yeah.
But so you know that.
Yeah.
So you know that for yourself. And so once we start to know that, the gig's up, right?
Can't unsee it. Yeah.
Unsee it and we get to do something about it because it's going to present itself in a more, if somebody's listening to this and they're not going to look at any of this, it's going to come around and say, hey, knock knock knock, here we go, we'll let you see a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's talk about a little bit like when we start to, do this work that you're describing. If people go and get your app and they start noticing these patterns in themselves, what are some of the things that start opening up for people?
What's going to happen is they're going to start to their voice, they're going to
Mm,
be like, they're going to notice, oh, this is this, oh, and they're going to notice how it's starting to shift. They're
mm,
going to notice that in a quicker what's going on around them and what's presenting itself in a quicker way, and they can just go in and they have choice now. They're going to allow themselves to have choice and not just skirt it under the blanket or anything, right? So that's a really key thing. The voice, that the how we talk to ourselves is going to shift.
mm.
And I noticed, a lot of people have noticed that they start to feel different, like they start to walk differently in life. Some people have expressed because they're more accepting. They're more accepting. They're more in their body,
Mm.
right? And so they're going to notice the shifts. So many times we shift and we change and we don't even see it.
Right.
Body hasn't, you expressed this in the beginning, our body hasn't caught up with the shift. But from coming from this perspective, from the inside out, we begin to notice the shifts. And for a lot of people, a lot more acknowledgement came, a lot more needs are being met through this process also. It's a full body spectrum, I think.
I love that. And I love that the first thing you bring up is the voice or, someone's voice, because, if we think about like the main way that we traditionally nourish ourselves is through consuming food through our mouth, right? Well, if that's somehow energetically blocked where we're taking in food, but we're not allowing ourselves to be nourished by it because of X, Y, and Z, if we have certain beliefs, right, that there's kind of this like empty void in ourselves that we're filling with food, right? You could think about it the other way around, like your magic, your sense of self is going to have a harder time coming out, just the same way that the food is having a harder time going in and actually being absorbed. So when you clear that pathway, right, through working with, like you said, the history that we all carry in our bodies about food, about the dinner table, about our early experiences with nourishment, right? It makes sense that you would also open up the expression. Someone's personal self expression would start to shift too, because it's that same space in our body. It's that same channel that if there's blockages there, it's going to block what needs to come out too, right? Like what needs to be said or what needs to be expressed in the most authentic way.
Right. I think that that's the biggest thing is just noticing the shift and beginning to speak and respect ourselves also in
Mm-hmm.
another way, acknowledging ourselves for, I mean, this is all of it. This is foundational work. Just going through this kind of foundational work is huge for people. It's so life-changing. And it's not to say that, oh, you're going to stop binging or it's not to say that, but you are going to have more choice in your
Mm-hmm.
life, which is really important because when we get to have choice in our life, we get to feel really empowered in our life. Like it's not saying, okay, you're not having chocolate. I'm having that chocolate because you know what? It's not coming from like, I'm just grabbing it. It's coming from I'm deciding I'm having that piece of chocolate and I'm having it, because
Right.
I'm making that choice. It's not a hidden little choice that we're making and we're sneaking it or, we're owning it.
Feeling guilty and making it reinforce a story of not enoughness or something, right?
Right. So a lot of these activations are so purposeful, are so foundational, so much so that people will be really can be really proud of the work they're doing. And I
Mm.
think that this is a really quick way, fast and nourishing. It's so nourishing to do it like this.
I love that you've created an app. I just think that is so like 21st century, like how, people being able to have this access to this knowledge and this information and this process like at their fingertips, like anywhere that they are. I think that's brilliant, and it sounds like it, all of this has come from your own personal processes and your processes with your clients, for over 30 years, and kind of, as you said, coming to this place where you're no longer trying to override your humanness or your emotions and jump into that ecstatic state. Now, what I want to ask is that since you had so much experience with these higher realms of consciousness, how does it feel to enter those more etheric places in your personal practice now that you're more in your body and you're not ignoring the physical, human sensations and emotions?
I want to say all on board. How do I say that? It feels so much more, it feels more amazing. It
Mm.
feels more, I like the way use the word etheric. It's like an awesome, like you're in awe
Mm.
that you can even feel because you're really feeling also in there. You could feel that.
Yeah, so you literally feel more now that you're in your emotional body as well.
Yeah. It's a real ecstatic. It kind of feels very reverent,
Mm. Hmm.
really reverent like that, that I've come to that point. I wish that for everyone that they could have that feeling and sensation in their body about like another realm because we only see what our minds are allowing us to see here, but there's so much, I feel like there's so much more to see that we can't even see with our eyes.
Mm.
So maybe it has to start with our feelings and our knowing and our faith, and then we can go to, other realms and really feel what's going on because we don't live in a 3D world anymore. We're in a
Yeah.
5D, probably more D world right now.
Yeah. Maybe say a little bit about that because you alluded to that earlier, just the way that you notice that collectively people's intuition, right, and their inner knowing is really like accentuated. It's coming online. What do you think kind of for humanity, for what we're kind of headed into, why are these tools that you're speaking to so essential for actually working with that new awareness?
Well, that's a good question. Very deep. Well, I think that as a human consciousness, a lot of the reason why things seem so chaotic right now and divisive is that we all get to know that this isn't what's feeling right in our body anymore. Like it doesn't
Mm.
work for us. us anymore. So we get to make a conscious decision to shift. And I like to say to a more loving, more, which is a higher vibration in frequency. Love is, a very high vibration. Are we in that? No, but we get to notice, are we, when we are in it and when we're not in it, and we get to make choices. Let's just say we stay in it like 30%. Maybe we go to more light vibration inside of us and have a bit of more of a sensation of that. And then our bodies start to shift vibrationally. The frequency of our body starts to shift and we become more in line. But I think that our goal is to shift as a human race, our consciousness. So if you shift and I shift, people around you shift also. So let's just say, you're too young for this, but they used to have this Perel commercial that they would say, if you tell one person and you tell another person, then it would geometrically
Oh, yeah, like the exponential.
exponential, so if I hold that space of light and frequency, a higher frequency, and I talk to 100 people around me and they have that experience and they start to understand it and they get it. It doesn't even matter if they understand me or get me. The mere fact that I'm holding that energy, I believe people gravitate to that energy and those people are able to see it and hold it in an unconscious way. It's not necessarily conscious.
Right.
Hard to hold that. I mean, I feel like people are really getting conscious lately because they are seeing the difference. And
Right.
this isn't working.
Yeah.
The state of the world, it's not working. So we get to by bringing ourselves up, we're allowing other people to
Mhm.
have that experience and a shift. And then they're going to shift 200 people and they're going to shift 300 people. You know what I mean? And people who find your podcast are already shifting.
Yeah.
They're already on their path and they're already shifting. So this might solidify a lot of it, but they
Yeah.
expanding. It's not, we don't stop in time.
Yeah. It's that spiral, kind of that spiral that I was speaking about like earlier, like what you're describing fits that perfectly, because the other thing I want to say here is that, sometimes when we are, and I'm speaking from like my past experience here, so no shade to anybody who like can relate to this because I'm speaking for myself too, but like we accidentally be in that, higher vibration while we're denying our humanity and we're, putting down like those low vibrations of fear and anger and all those emotions that we deem too unpleasant, right? Those flavors of life, right? And when other people come in contact with spiritual people like that, it can be very triggering because it's like they feel or they sense without even realizing it that their own humanity isn't okay, right? But then when you start to become more integrated, like with what you've been doing, right? And what you're up to now, where you are in that space of higher vibration while being with your human self, while being with the injured child, right, inside of you. And now you're stepping out into the world with that. And even just that awareness, right, that comes from having not done that, having not been in that like, holistic place, right? Now there's an opportunity for other people unconsciously to feel more accepting of themselves while having like a little taste of those higher vibrational energies, to see what's possible.
Well, in relationship to what you're saying, it's not like, oh, they're there and we're here. It's
Right.
not like that because we experience a full spectrum of these behaviors too. Like we go from like low frequency. I mean, I do.
Oh yeah.
There's days when I just sit in that really hateful vibration and
Funky feeling, yeah.
I know better, and I get to go in and look again. So I mean, we're being shown, these frequencies, but we're also being shown a whole spectrum of them, right?
Yeah.
So we get to have compassion for ourselves when we go there and compassion when we see it also
Right. In other people.
in other people or in ourselves because it's opening ourselves up to the path to the higher frequencies, right? It's opening ourselves up and
Yes.
and that's the path we're following. And that's the path I call nourishment because what else is it besides joy and nourishment? But I was always trained not to accept
Right.
that part of me. But we can't go out in the world and not accept what's going on right now or close our eyes and not see it. And because everything's affecting us differently. So we get to be part of the change. Who said that? We get to be part of the change in life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the feeling I'm getting here is just that the value of both sides of that experience, like your experience that you had being, in this etheric or, higher vibrational space, but not in your, humanity, and then now integrating those pieces, I can see that there was nourishment and value in the time that you and I spent denying our humanity. Like that actually was part of the process, right?
And when it comes to food, how many of us beat ourselves? Food was the best gift. Our food behavior, how we do food, is the best gift that we have ever had. We get mad at ourselves, we get mad at our bodies, we're angry at our bodies, we can't diet. Well, we weren't meant to diet.
Mm,
Part of the whole nourishment process is to expand and give us more nourishment and give us more light. So, us being angry at ourselves every time we eat, oh my God, it's such a disservice to ourselves. The food is the gift.
mm,
Whatever the relationship we have with food is the gift. It protected us.
mm.
It protected us. It allowed us to learn more about ourselves. It allowed us to hide when we needed to hide because survival is really hard.
Yeah.
So food and our behaviors around food and our bodies and everything is the gift, is the
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I always tell people like the years that I spent with like my limited diet and
Right.
allergic to dairy, gluten and soy and being like, half the time like vegan and vegetarian because I was immersed in the yoga world and like that was just like how you did it, you know what I mean? Like there was so much stress in my life about food, but there were gifts that came out of that too. Like now if I have somebody who has food sensitivities or, has is vegan or whatever, I can make something for them for dinner. And I can also make, I've like got this wide array of like different ways of cooking and providing, food for different kinds of people, and I also have a like less judgment about both ends of the spectrum, whether you're someone who's like, gung ho meat eater or whether you're like a hardcore vegan, like I get it. Like I get both ends of it. And I have this flexibility that I wouldn't have had if I didn't have to go through all of that
That you
noise and all of that
were,
distress.
including you accept all of these things about you, which is the
Yeah.
greatest gift that we
Yeah.
had. Can you imagine if we didn't have food? What if we didn't have food? Like, or what if we didn't have that relationship with food that made us feel safe? Food makes us feel safe, right? And we eat, some of us binge, some of us eat a lot because there's not enough food in the world to make us feel safe.
Right. Because that safety needs to start being generated from within as well. Right. And when you have, diversifying your tools, and I love what you're saying because, food is part of like my 6-month program. We have a somatic food conversation and like we are exploring it from a bunch of different angles, including like, how is this, thing that you're vilifying, the overeating, the binging, this particular food that you think you need to stop eating? How is it actually serving you? How has it actually been providing for you? And can we diversify once you identify, oh, this is how I'm giving myself fun? I don't have enough fun in my life. The fun
Right.
I have is eating a bag of popcorn at the end of a long day. You know what I mean? Like, okay, well, let's think of ways that you can give yourself more fun in your life so that it's not only, eating a, entire bag of popcorn. That's the
Popcorn
way
and
you have
eating.
fun. That's a legitimate way that you've been having fun. Let's not take that away from you. You need fun.
Right.
Popcorn's fun. Let's find other ways you can also have fun.
We know once we have that voice that says, okay, don't eat this, don't eat that. Da, da, da. You can't have too much. Oh, I ate too much. When we have that voice going on, our body is designed to rebel against
Oh
that.
yeah, that's me. I don't
It's
have, yeah.
worse. So we get to come to an okay state in our
Yeah.
body and an okay state in our mind and soul and spirit that, okay, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with it. No matter what we do, we get to be okay when it comes to food, right?
Yeah, I love that. I agree 100%. My body will like my consciousness, if I tell myself, and I know this from 10 years of doing this to myself, if I give myself rules and I tell myself I can't eat that, I might be able to like do it for a little while and then I'm just going to like go the opposite direction. So sometimes people ask me when they see the kind of food that I'm eating, they're like, "Oh, are you vegan?" And it's like, "Well, a lot of the food that I eat is plant-based and I don't, sometimes I don't eat animal products for long periods of time. But if I feel like eating a piece of chicken, if I want to have a piece of birthday cake and there's eggs in it, I am not going to deny myself that because I know that it doesn't work out for me to do that. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel nourishing. I need to have the freedom to eat what I feel like eating while acknowledging like what my body really wants and needs."
Right. And just knowing that like in the back of our head, and the voice is like, oh, I can have that if I want. Maybe we say, all right, you know what? I don't really want it right now. We come from a different choice perspective.
Yeah,
So
totally.
the goal of this nourishment path too is to really make choices that are based internally for what our body's really craving. And we don't have a story around it that like reformulates the food. Like maybe the food, I believe like food takes on, if we sit there and say, oh, this is bad, it almost takes on an acidic, more acidicness to it. And our body can't even metabolize it because
Oh,
we're
yeah.
so wrong after we eat it that it's affecting every part of our body. We don't realize how much.
Right.
If we had some kind of imaging device that we could realize what that food we ate after the words we said about it happened, that would be, here, we got to come up with that.
That would be awesome. I mean, it's so great to see that real time because it's true. I mean, I made myself with the food allergies I had. It took me a while to decondition myself from believing, oh, if somebody told me this has soy sauce in it, I'm allergic to soy. I ate a little bit of it. That means I'm going to be sick. And did I create that? My body is very powerful. It can create nausea. It can create tightness in my throat after eating something that I found out had soy sauce in it. What happened when I started somatically releasing, right, and releasing the patterns and the beliefs and the unclenching of that fear pattern is like, oh, I ate something with soy sauce in it. Let's see what happens instead of I already know what's going to happen, right?
That's key. That's key.
Yeah, wonderful. This is such an exciting conversation. I'm so excited for people to
Fun.
hear this podcast. Maybe as we're kind of winding down the conversation here, you've created the app, right? And this process. What are some of the other
I'm
ways
also
that,
coming out with a
yeah,
book,
there you go.
my book cover. Let me see if you can see it. It's called Nourish. It's getting lined up right now. And I have two other books that I've written also. One is called Eat Your Words,
Mm.
and it's talking about the words that we would say to ourselves. It's a story of a woman that's talking about words that she would say to herself. So she would, when in her relationship with food. And bod behavior is a discussion on a lot of different modalities, including a lot of therapeutic ways to deal with any kind of food behaviors, which is interesting to see what's out there.
So these are books that are already out.
These are books that are already out on their
Okay.
own. So Bod Behavior and Eat Your Words. They're on Amazon already. But my Nourish app, I'm actually we're going to give you a link for a free 1 month, application for people to listen to the app. And I would listen to as many as I can in that 1 month period and really see what shifts in your life. I believe it's super powerful.
Mm.
And if they ever want to work with me one on one, I have a site called, it's my name, Isabel Chiara, CHIARA.com. And they could just go, there's a lot of fun stuff in there, including a lot of interviews and a lot of my books are on there. So it's a full source website.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, definitely check out the app, everybody. Go into the show notes, get that 1 month and start playing with this stuff. Start, experiencing some of the things that Isabel and I have been talking about today in terms of reconnecting, right? And bringing back that sense of nourishment and power in your life. If you were to give our audience like kind of like a final few words of wisdom, do you have anything that's coming forward to say?
Yeah. Wherever you are in the path of nourishment, you are in the right spot and it expands itself. And as long as you start to look at yourself on the path of nourishment, you begin to feel wonderful, great, and you continue on it because how can you not?
Mm.
Feel so good.
Oh, yeah, I love this. It feels very aligned with the modality that I do and just the way that you're using a very gentle, loving way to invite people to connect with themselves, right? That we don't have to make changes through force or through denial or through what's the almost the opposite of nourishment would be like deprivation, right? We don't have to choose the path of deprivation. We can choose the path of nourishment,
Restriction.
restriction,
We don't have
right?
to restrict ourselves in our life. We get to come out and be fully who we are, including making our own choices, feeling empowered in the world.
Mm.
That's what it's all about. We didn't come here to like be small.
Yes, be small and follow rules. Yeah, love it. Well, it's been such an amazing conversation. Connect with Isabel, look in the show notes, find her app, find her website, and any other social media links. And we will be in conversation because I feel like there's a lot more that we have to share.
We get to. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
nice meeting you.
Hey there, friend. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I would love to hear your thoughts. Follow me on Instagram at Aimee Takaya and send me a DM about this episode. I'd like to thank you for being part of this somatic revolution. And if you'd like to support the podcast and help more people learn about somatics, consider leaving a review or a rating. And finally, if you'd like to have the experience of relief in your tight hips or back and learn to understand what your body is really saying to you, visit youcanfreeyoursoma.com. I can't wait to share with you what is truly possible. Bye for now.